friend. You're listening to The Sustainable Body Worker, the podcast for massage therapists who want to grow thriving, purpose-led businesses without the burnout. Here we talk about nervous system aligned business strategy, pricing that makes sense, client work that doesn't deplete you, and how to build a career that actually supports your life. I'm your host, Gretchen Pop, massage therapist, mentor, educator, and recovering overachiever. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Sustainable Body Worker podcast. I'm so excited to introduce our guest for today, Tracy Windmill. She is an international educator for the art of transformational touch. In case you have no idea what that is, I highly recommend you search for it, watch some videos to see how groundbreaking and transformative this work truly can be. It's a beautiful style of work to watch, and I haven't received it yet, but I am absolutely going to get on her table at some point. We have such a lovely conversation, and I'm just so excited for you to enjoy this with us. So thank you for joining, and I will see you inside the episode. Alrighty. Hello, Tracy. Thank you so much for joining for this conversation. I truly feel blessed to have you here and to facilitate this conversation because it really seems like the conversations that we've had prior to starting the recording that we're really on the same page about a lot of things. And I would really love to hear more of your perspective on it. But first, just for the listeners, I'd really love to know a little bit more about the development of the art of transformational touch and how particularly your understanding of the nervous system kind of contributes to the development of that and how it's kind of evolved over time with your practice.
Oh, and thank you so much for having me. This is a wonderful opportunity and just lots of gratitude. So thank you. As far as, the art of transformational touch and how it developed, I love to be the eternal student. I love to learn so many different modalities. And for a while in my career, I was definitely immersing myself in lots of education. And then in the application of all those different modalities and techniques, I saw these similarities kind of come up. And one of the big ones that really came up was I realized that while the techniques themselves were wonderful and amazing, and there's so much opportunity within them, they couldn't quite land because sometimes my clients were like, in an anxiety patterning state. Or sometimes my clients were like in this like almost like, too far down the parasympathetic state where they're like depressive and they're not really feeling things and, like they're in burnout basically. And I quickly realized that I had to bring that into the equation for the techniques to be much more effective.
That makes so much sense. It actually reminds me of something that my husband, who's also a body worker, mentioned the other day. He was speaking about an experience he had with his client that he even felt this person's presentation before they arrived for their session. He just got that kind of hint that there's going to be kind of a big energy coming into the room. And then this person came in and was presenting with a lot of like, whoa, okay, how am I gonna meet this person? And
Yeah.
that makes me think, I mean, he's incredibly sensitive and to a degree, body workers in general are, right? And it really makes me think of, we have this I don't necessarily like the word duty, but you get my point to recognize kind of the state that our clients are in and be able to kind of meet them where they're at so that they can receive in a much more profound way.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned to me previously, you work with 5 somatic presentations. And I'm curious if you can kind of help us understand what those are and what it feels like as a practitioner to be in the presence of those patterns.
Yeah, so we can call them somatic presentations, we can call them nervous system presentations. And I'm a person who loves patterns and notices them. And I started to, when I really was paying attention, was notice these 5 different patterns that my clients would present with. And the big overarching one that almost all of us present with is the armored body, the protective pattern. We all have it to some degree. Um, I myself was in a pretty horrific car accident when I was a child, and I've done a lot of work, and I've had to, and I've had no choice around body work and PT to get my injuries so that they're not at the forefront of my everyday life. And to me, if you come in hard and fast, my body's going to be like, what? It's just going to have this protectiveness that it won't, the techniques, I won't be able to receive them at all. My body will just be stuck in protective mode and I won't be able to get past that. And I've had therapists like decide that more pressure is the way to go, which actually then puts me like more in protective patterning. Um, and so that's the big overarching one that I notice that pretty much all of us present with is this, the armored body, the protective body. And we all have it because we've all fallen off our bicycles as kids. We've fallen in our houses. We've fallen on the ice outside. We've had sports injuries. So all of those things have added up to both our body and our nervous system being protective.
That makes so much sense. I call that the turtle shell. It's that
Yeah.
you say armor, and that's exactly what a turtle shell is, right?
Yeah.
There's there is that, and we can feel it. In some clients, there's a lot more dense tissue that it's like, oh,
Yeah.
there's clearly a lot of armoring that's
Yeah.
happening there. I'm definitely one of those people. I've had people question, like, do you get massage regularly enough? The answer is no. But how might practitioners be impacted in their work by working from one of those states without realizing it?
Yeah, big time. Because it affects how we are able to orient the place we are able to orient it from.
Mm.
So if we ourselves are in a very heightened protective pattern, we hear the other person less. We can't help it. It's not something that we're doing on purpose, but our body is being so protective that it's tuning itself into what's happening inside it. So our interoception is on high alert. So our way that we orientate on the inside and experience the world inside of us. Um, so it does impact us as the practitioner because we can't quite be fully present with our person.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm curious what your first step would be in that regard if we are coming from. I mean, so let's give a kind of a hypothetical example. In a situation where life happens before we're supposed to go into a massage and it puts up our armored state. I'm sure there's things that, we can start to be aware of those patterns in ourselves, maybe prepare ourselves for being receptive for a client. I mean, I've been in very traumatic situations while like right before going into a session and just kind of having to do the thing. So I'm curious about your thoughts around how we navigate life while still trying to hold space and be open for our clients in those situations.
It's tricky, my friend. And congratulations to all of us for honoring our humanness in our own humanity. Definitely breathing exercises because then that's going to work directly on our vagal nerve. So
Yes.
it'll change the tone of our vagal nerve, and we'll be able to actually land a little bit more in our body. And it's probably like the most effective, quickest technique that we can use ourselves as the therapist.
Yeah, I love a good vagal toning exercise. I've got a one of the newest releases to my hypnotherapy library is a vagal toning hypnotherapy where we get ourselves into that rested state through some vocal toning and breathing exercises before going into the hypnotherapy, because sometimes those visualizations, I've heard from so many people that it can be really hard to do our self-care and our, whether it's visualization practice or meditation practice, because it's like we're so up in our heads and we're so hyper vigilant sometimes to be able to drop in like that. So I love a good vagal toning trick to be able to just, ooh, turn that
Endless.
on and get in it.
Yeah. And it can be really quick. It doesn't have to be this big long practice. And I myself have a very strong meditation, Vedic meditation practice. And whenever I go to group meditation, my teacher always starts with, some yoga nidra, some breathing, like always, every single time. And it makes me go with my own practice at home. I don't typically do that.
Mm.
Like, oh, I should include that. That was so effective. And we just did it for 2 minutes.
It's so easy. We think
So
that
effective.
it's this whole, even 20 minutes can feel really daunting for some people, but it's funny when I'm driving in the car. I had this experience for a little while, which I've more recently overcome, where I'd start getting anxiety. I started developing agoraphobia over certain situations. So leaving my house and driving away from my house started creating anxiety. And when I learned about the VU vagal toning technique, I started doing that while driving down the driveway. And my daughter'd be listening to her Taylor Swift on her headphones and being like, Mom, what's that? And I'm like, I'm just VUing. It's
I'm just
okay.
going there. Don't mind me.
Yeah, don't mind me. But it
Just
really
toning
is
my
like
vagal nerve.
just
It's
my
fine.
vagal nerve. I think after just even three VU breaths, you can just feel that grounding. And it really does, it is kind of like a switch.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
really powerful and it's definitely um, super efficient and effective.
Yeah.
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 So feeling yourself, like you said, life happens and life happens. We can't help it. Life is lifey, I like to say. And and sometimes we get hit with a curveball right before a client's going to arrive. So how do we manage that?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and it's so good to just kind of keep techniques in your back pocket too, which is why I'm so excited to continue having these kinds of conversations. And
Yeah.
you've mentioned you speak about hypotonic and hypertonic nervous system responses. So
Yeah.
I'm curious about how you have developed. You mentioned meditation practice. How do you support your own body in recognizing which state you're in before a session begins?
I'm a pretty grounded person, but that has to do with a lot of the practices that I have for myself on a daily basis, such as the Vedic meditation. I also am a big workout person as far as keeping my physical body strong. And it's one thing that I do notice within the classroom and some of these larger massage events that I attend and either teaching at or speaking at or giving demonstrations is that unfortunately there isn't as much attention on having strength and having a good level of fitness for this very, very physical job that we do. And then burnout happens or injuries happen, which could have potentially been avoided if we had had a really great, strength, stretching, fitness routine. And I think it's so important, mind, body, keeping them both really strong is super important. And they're two things that, even with the amount of travel that I do these days, I travel all around North America and Europe and teach and judge at massage championships. And yeah, it's non-negotiable for me. Like a lot of people are like, oh, we're on vacation. And I'm like, yeah, but this is my life. So if I ignore it for these 2 weeks and then try to regain it in the 2 weeks I'm at home before I take off for another 2 week trip, I'm going to have a really fluctuating practice versus when I have that foundation and stability, then I have stability.
Yeah, I could not agree with you more. It's funny you mentioned that, oh, I'm on vacation. For me, that translates to that means I can give myself a full 45 minutes instead of my 20 to 30 minutes of
Yeah,
my
instead of
yoga practice.
like putting it in, yeah, you're like, okay.
Yeah, I get to
Um,
do more of what makes me feel good because I have that space for it. And it's such an important topic that you bring up. I personally got interested in the sustainability aspect of this through my own burnout story, which I've shared in previous episodes. But the fundamental piece of it was that I was not caring for my body as though I was working with my body. And I really do believe that to a degree, we are athletes. We are on our feet sometimes 8 hours a day massaging people. It does require a lot of strength, and there's a nutritional aspect to it. I became a nutritionist while healing my own autoimmune condition and working with that. And the level at which, through employing people and being a manager of a high volume clinic, witnessing what people feed themselves to fuel themselves between sessions, the snacks and the quick things, is definitely perpetuating the decline in longevity of this
Yeah.
career, I believe. And yeah, we're really just athletes that don't necessarily have the tools and the resources to be able to have that longevity. So you bring up a really important point there.
Yeah, or we're not taught that it needs to be prioritized.
Yeah,
So, putting ourselves first actually helps others.
yeah. I bring up a
Not the other way around. We often think it's the other way around. Oh, we put the
yes,
other first and then we take care of ourselves. No, no, no. Like, take care of yourself, and then you're much more capable and have so much more capacity to take care of others.
absolutely. I mean, not to mention the resonance that we have with our clients as well. When we're able to take care of ourselves and prioritize ourselves, we can then speak from a place of living or walking the walk when we're
Yeah.
asking our clients to prioritize themselves as well. I have this metaphor that I often love going back to, and it's a story of a man walking through the woods who comes across another man who's trying to saw down a tree with a blunt saw. And he says, you could really save some time by sharpening that saw. And the man says, no, I don't have time to sharpen it. I got to cut down this tree. And really, while we feel like we're, pausing and possibly not being as productive because I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to go do that, the time that we take to fill our own cup and nourish ourselves actually allows us to be a lot sharper for all of the things that we're doing, which impact our clients.
Yeah, exactly. And it's super important. And I wish that there was a lot more emphasis. And I am starting to see a few modalities come out with some self-care routines and some little self-care courses, which I'm over here clapping my hands like, yay.
Yeah.
So then therapists that specialize in those modalities then have something to fall back on, or at least having this reminder that it's important.
Absolutely. And that brings to mind, the what I think is a little disheartening is that practitioners are often limited in how many self-care related continuing education credits they're allowed to take in order to apply it toward their license renewal. There's limits in some places. And I know that NCBTMB has a limit on how many credits a course will be awarded that is self-care, which I believe there needs to be a shift toward the toward the opposite, where we're actually encouraged to take more self-care. And I believe that that actually would contribute to an influx of more and more practitioners feeling capable of stepping up and sharing their self-care techniques in an educational format. One of the things I love supporting body workers to do is stepping into education roles, especially with online courses, to be able to supplement their income. But being able to share one's own self-care techniques, whether it's a mindset self-care or a nutritional self-care or a movement self-care, if there is more support from the governing bodies to make it so that that's actually a lucrative or profitable way to supplement our income by way of offering more CEs, that would be a big shift in this. And that's just my here's my splash in a wave here in this industry right here. Just gonna splash away.
Yeah, I love that, and I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful of the direction that the massage industry as a whole is steering towards.
Agreed. Yeah. I'm curious if with these somatic presentations that you work with, are there any that you've found to be more difficult to work with or difficult to navigate?
Yeah, and let's because we only discussed the one, and
The
there's
armored, yeah.
Muhammad. So like just like you brought up, there is hypotonic and then there's hypertonic, which actually refers to the state of nervous system patterning. So everybody is pretty familiar with sympathetic nervous system responses. some of our trauma responses live up in that place. And that is our fight response, our flight response. Our freeze response actually lives at the top of fight or flight.
Yep.
And then when we come out of freeze, we're at the very top of fight or flight. So then that's problematic because then we've got this excess of energy that needs to be discharged.
Yep.
And then, our other trauma response is fawn, which is, a little bit newer for all of us to get to know. But it's wonderful that we have all this information. So that sympathetic nervous system patterning is that hypertonic response. And you'll see it by, like, I call it a couple of different ones. There's one that's called the overstimulated body, and that's the person who comes in and they're just chatty Cathy. I mean, they are just, all that energy has to go somewhere. And now because they can't really, maybe they'll present as like fidgeting, they kind of can't sit still, and they're trying to explain things to you. And it kind of hurts everywhere. But the whole time, their mouth is just going because the energy needs to be coming out somewhere. And then you think, oh, maybe they're going to settle down when they get on the table. Nope, they just continue because the energy has to go somewhere, and they're so overstimulated and often in that anxiety patterning place of sympathetic response, they can't help it. They're just so overstimulated, and they can't really receive the work very well until that energy is dispersed to a certain extent. And they're the clients that I would invite into perhaps before we start, if I'm recognizing the pattern and being like, oh, they're in hyper, and they've got all this excess energy, how about we do some more dynamic breathing exercises before we start, just to disperse some of that energy? How about we try and get you a little bit more like into your body rather than just from this like responsive place? So we might do some exercises that are pretty fast paced just to try and once again disperse that energy out before getting them on the table. And everyone I tell this particular patterning to, they always go, oh yeah, I've got that client like that. And you're responding going like, oh, that's your grocery shopping list? Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even though you invite them to be quiet, you invite this time to be for them, their nervous system cannot change the patterning. They're stuck in the hamster wheel.
Yeah, it's like a frequency, and we can't meet them at that calm, low
Mhm.
frequency. It's just not a match yet. We kind of have to meet them where they're at and
Yeah.
facilitate it down.
Yeah.
And it brings me back to that conversation I was having with my husband about that client that came in, that he sensed them coming in because of their energy. I wonder if their auric field was just so big that he felt them coming up the stairs. But um,
And which
I
is so true because they can have big energy. Like
absolutely,
they're the
yeah.
type of person who, when you're in a conversation with them, it won't be till often like several minutes later, they'll go, oh, you said this?
Yeah.
Because it
Yeah.
can't land, it can't get in.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, the visual there is so strong. Yeah. And I had wondered, I wonder if this is really the value of having that curated waiting room, the spa experience. We both come from kind of the spa world and had that experience where they get to go into the locker room and they get to change clothes and they get to put on the
Mhm.
fuzzy slippers. And I mean, even there, that entire transition of being able to take off their street clothes and get into a cozy robe is, metaphorical, but still kind of I think, a intentional practice to be able to let that go, leave that aside, lock it in the locker, put on a cozy robe, sit in the nice, relaxing waiting room for a little while, and allow the value there of being able to just settle in on their own before they get taken back to the treatment room. And it had me kind of stirring these ideas in my mind of maybe that's what's missing for some of us in private practice, and that creates that divide in experience for the client who are so used to that spa setting where it's 10-15 minutes of winding down and letting the world go before they start interacting with their massage therapist. I'm curious about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I think that's a wonderful transition that happens in the spa environment is they're able to have all these really symbolic things that happen. Like you said, they're taking off their street clothes, they're putting the robe on, they're in quiet rooms, they're often invited to put their phone down, so not have that stimulation from a device. And it can be really impactful for people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
You made a good point with private practice. Like these days now, I just have a home practice. And yeah, and one of the things that I do is as soon as I come in the door, cup of tea. It's already made. Like, it's here. They don't have to drink it, um, but it's here. And it just gives a little bit of an opportunity for their attention to be focused on something else.
yeah. Well, and energetically too. I mean, I love going down the spiral of like vibrational medicine, energetic medicine. I studied herbal medicine for 4 years, and one of my loves for herbal medicine, you mentioned tea, is the energy that we're able to put into that and the intention and vibration around that. And there's so much to be said for tea ceremonies historically, and whether that's anthropologically our DNA kind of gets activated with a cup of something, just being able to like, there's that pause. Ancestrally, when we've had to sit down with a warm beverage or a warm soup, there might be something that gets activated there that allows us to kind of come back to that, oh, I'm safe sensation.
Yeah. Like landing in your body, becoming embodied as well. So instead
Yeah.
of being like more in the mind channel, because there's 5 channels of awareness, and that's our most conscious one, the one that we live in the majority of the time, be able to get back down into the body channel, which is actually the 3rd channel down and is the one that's the middle communicator channel, because the very lowest and subconscious is our emotions.
That does that have any similarity to the chakra systems?
A little bit. Think of it more as like the 5 senses. So taste, touch, smell, hearing. So it's similar to that. So it's the mind channel is our most conscious. The next one down is our imagination. And I like to explain it to clients in somatic sessions that it's the one where we go to bring our truest form of reality to life.
Wow.
And then we have our body channel, which is, like I said, it's the communicator channel, which is why we can hold so many physical ailments because it's, between our emotions and our mind, it's the bridge. And so sometimes it's like, time out, hard no, everyone. Like, you're not listening. And then the next channel down is our sensations channel. And that's the one when we first walk into a room where the sensations are there, where we're either like, yeah, it's a party, like, woohoo, I feel safe, like I feel joy, I feel happiness, like your body tells you that. Or ultimately you walk in and you're orientating and scanning the room and you're like, ooh, danger, danger, don't feel good. And your tummy's like, ooh. Yeah, and then we go down into the emotion channel, which is the one we have the least control of. So it's the one we tend to shy away from, even though we
Mm.
like all the good feelings.
Yep. Oh,
Yeah.
that's so interesting. I'm really interested in the ways that we can kind of connect with those for ourselves, see how we're showing up for our sessions, and as we spoke prior to recording, I'm interested in how or I believe that there's kind of this role that we take on as facilitators of body work to kind of recognize the place that we are in and hold that space for our clients.
Yeah.
And I've noticed through my time coaching practitioners and witnessing so many different forms of burnout, a lot of body workers are exhausted, they're overstimulated, they're getting, that vampire energy happening. Or I mean, I would oftentimes take my clients' pain patterns home with me. And that was when I was a baby massage therapist. I had to learn a lot of kind of grounding protective mechanisms for myself. And I'm curious about what you think about how the nervous system attunement might shift our capacity to show up sustainably.
Oh, 100%. Our nervous system is this amazing feat of engineering. I like to say that humans are fragile and we have ancient motivations in a modern world. And what I mean by that is our nervous systems were designed when we were hunter-gatherers, when we actually lived in the cave and had to go out and physically work out, is this safe? Is this dangerous? And then we were the prey or we were the predator. So that's what our nervous systems were originally designed for. And these days, we can get attacked by an email.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we deal with that? Like before, when it was like the lion chasing us, simple solution. You ran. You went into a but you get like an email that is perceived as attacking you. What do you do with that?
Yeah.
Like now you have all this energy and your nervous system is having a very specific response, but we're not having the physicality of it, of how we're like moving and completing that trauma response cycle. So then the energy, it gets stuck in our body and then it manifests in a lot of different ways. Um, I posted recently on social media about how the psoas should be worked in every single session.
Mm.
And part of that is because of our default trauma responses, which we get ready. We're getting ready for that danger situation. So we're bracing. And especially people that have had big T trauma in their lives and a lot of it, they're in this constant bracing. So their psoas is like contracted and like, and it brings them over into like this more protective patterning response. And to me, I'm kind of like, we all have that to a certain extent. So we should always work the psoas muscle. Do we have to work it directly and in a painful way? Hell no. There's so many creative ways that we can work the psoas. And actually, my favorite way to work it is when it's in a mechanically shortened position
Mm.
and the belly is in a slack place. So then the psoas has less of a chance to engage and be able to kick you out.
Yeah, it's already in that armored position.
Yeah.
My husband has a wonderful way of working at it from side lying because it just really allows the
Okay.
belly to soften.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you get the belly gets into this slack pace, and then the muscle itself physically can't kick you out.
Yeah. Yeah. And also in side lying, depending on the positioning, you can get into that fetal position and help the client already feel safe. They're in that protected feeling sensation so that working on it in that way can be just kind of a natural, like, it's okay, I'm holding you here. You can be
Yeah.
safe.
You are
Yeah.
safe. And that's such a big thing. I love that you keep bringing up the safe aspect. To me, three magic ingredients: safety, permission, and trust. Nothing can unfold in the massage room, in the bodywork room, without those three magic ingredients. And they also apply to us as the therapist. We need to have permission. We need to have trust. We need to feel safe. And if those things aren't unfolding for us as the therapist, then reassess what's happening. Like, stop, pause, try and work out, get clarity on what is actually happening in the room. And then if you continue to not feel those things, take care of yourself.
Yeah, I wonder how much of these red flag moments that we have that are just kind of felt sensations versus overt, like that's a red flag and the session now. But these
Yeah.
more subtle,
Subtle.
nuanced scenarios might actually just be a sensing of the client's unease and lack of
Yeah.
safety.
Yeah. And that's why I'm always like, stop. Like, don't let it become the elephant in the room. Completely stop the session and gain clarity. Because when we don't have clarity and we have confusion, it's hard to have momentum. But when we gain clarity, now we have momentum. Now we have a place to launch ourselves from or to move forward from. But without the clarity, like you just is this accurate? Is this accurate? Is this actually happening? Is it me? Is it them? Um, and it really is zero helpful to either the client or ourselves. And then like we end the session and we walk out and we're like, I don't know what happened just then. I don't know if I was any good. I don't know if I served them. I didn't know if that's helpful. It doesn't feel helpful in my body. Yeah, and then you go into your next session, you're still kind of carrying it with you, and you're like, you're questioning yourself. So it impacts you when you don't stop and gain that clarity.
Yeah, absolutely. What would stopping and gaining that clarity look like? Do you have an example? Because for me, those times I come from a people pleasing fawn state. And so I have found in my own practice that those times, even when there were overt, like that's not okay, the ability to actually stop the session and feeling that pressure of like, oh, but I'm expected to continue massaging through this. What is something that you would suggest to a practitioner? Let's go for more of those, like just a weird felt sensation, not necessarily something clearly red flag, but how would you recommend pausing and being able to gain that clarity?
I recommend actually completely stopping the session, removing your hands from the client and actually getting down to their level and, asking them if we can please take a moment just to make sure that we're on the same page. Then you can use I statements where you're like, hey, I was feeling something and I just want to make sure that this is accurate.
I
I
love
want to
that.
make sure, and I want to give us an opportunity to make sure that this is still going to be like really serving you. So then bringing them into it as well. Um, and it can be really amazing. And some people, some clients definitely, when I've done this, can feel a little, you know, ooh, like now she's kind of in my face.
Mm.
Um, yeah, but I try to do it with a lot of kindness, without accusation, without being judgmental. And that's why I bring myself into it and say, hey, I'm feeling this, and I'm wondering how you're doing.
Yeah, coming from that place of curiosity always gets more answers.
Yeah.
Always. Yeah. Oh,
And
beautiful.
sometimes, like, it's just you're gonna have the client that just isn't respectful, which is unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. And but then once again, it's up to us as the therapist to decide whether we're going to continue the session or not. Um, I these days have way less of that happening in my room. I have a lot of emotional releases in my room. And I have almost the same approach, like especially if they're having a really big release. And but then I give them options. Hey, I'm noticing this. And here is what could unfold right now. We can continue the session. I can step out and give you some privacy. We can end the session. Which of these feels like it's a good fit for you right now?
I love that. And from that place, people oftentimes aren't necessarily able to come up with solutions for themselves because they're so much in their emotional brain rather than their
There's so
logical,
much
what's the
going
next
on.
step? So
Yeah.
giving those handful of options is really helpful to just be able to facilitate what it is that they really need.
Yeah. And 95% of the time, they want to continue the session.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're there to move the things through.
Yeah, and that has a lot to do with the safety in the room. And by addressing rather than just like leaving them there, a sobbing mess on the table, you gain that clarity. So therefore, there's that opportunity for that momentum to continue.
I love that so much. Hey, friend, quick pause in the episode because I have to share something that's made a huge impact on both my practice and the work I teach inside my courses. Now, if you've been following me for a while, you probably remember the teal cups I started out with. Those were iconic in my early days of teaching cupping therapy. But here's the thing I learned the hard way: not all silicone cups are created equal. I started noticing huge inconsistencies between sets: cups that discolored fast, sharp edges that irritated my client's skin, and it just wasn't cutting it for the level of work I was doing. And in 2020, I found Global Cupping and I've never looked back. Their cups are hands down the clearest, smoothest, and most consistent silicone cups I've ever used, and I've tried a ton. The difference in quality is immediately noticeable. These cups stay clear even after repeated disinfection, and they're built to stand up to high-level sanitation protocols, something I insist on teaching in my neuromuscular cupping therapy trainings. What I also love is the customizability. I can mix and match sizes in a set, no more stockpiling a bunch of cups I never use, and their silicone facial cups are my absolute go-to now for jaw work. No more rubber bulbs on the glass cups to worry about disintegrating, just easy to clean, durable tools that are comfortable for both the client and the therapist. In my own approach, I combine cupping with movement, massage, and retraining at the neuromuscular junction. And that means I need cups that can move with the body, grip well, and feel safe and smooth on sensitive tissue. These silicone cups, especially the 55 hardness to start with, are perfect for that. And for chronic pain clients, especially those with nervous system dysregulation, the ability to glide, pause, and work in dynamic ways is key to breaking pain cycles. Plus, their customer service, impeccable. I'm a stickler for this. I've had questions, students have had questions, and they're always quick, professional, and just genuinely kind. It makes a really big difference. So, whether you're brand new to cupping or you're refining your technique, this is the gear I recommend. It's an investment in your practice that pays off in results, ease of use, and your client's comfort. Use code NEURO at checkout for 20% off your first order at globalcupping.com. All right, let's get back to the episode. Your work seems so deeply embodied and you hold space so beautifully. I mean, I have not received from you yet, and I say
I
yet
love how you
with a
said yes.
big bold, someday I will get on your table. But it, even just watching it through the screen, it seems and feels so embodied and not just, based off of theory. There's actual work happening at play. So I'm curious how you learned how to trust what your own body was saying.
Oh, it was scary. It was really scary. I was like, who am I to think that like I can just pick up the client and hold them? Like, what's happening here? Like, why is this so important that I do this? Um, and I was really fortunate with one of my long-term clients who was incredibly open. And the conversation went something along the lines of like, hey, Steve, like I learned some new techniques and I'm kind of interested in integrating them. Like, are you open? And he's like, yeah. Um, I'm like, okay, we're going to do some different things than normal. Uh, yeah, and the first time I picked him up and put him in my lap, and this is a pretty big guy. He's in his late 60s. He's an ex college football player, incredibly successful businessman, the patriarch of his family, holding a big space for lots of people. And um, all of a sudden, he went from coming in once a month to coming in once a week. And then all of a sudden, his wife was coming in and she was coming in once a week. And then the grown up kids, the adult kids were coming in. And I was like, ooh, like that hasn't been like this before. Can you tell me more about that? What was the switch? And he looked me right in the eye and he said, you know, I never get to be the little spoon. And I totally had this light bulb moment where I was like, well, who else of us don't get to be the little spoon?
Yeah.
Be held and don't get to be in that place as an adult where somebody is caring for us, which is basically what he was saying by being a little spoon. He was expressing that he was having an opportune moment with me where he got to be in that place of receiving care instead of giving it and being the other way around. Um, and it was incredibly impactful for me. And I was kind of like, okay, I need to get out of my own way and I need to stop making up my mind on whether the client wants this or not. Instead, I need to make sure that my communication is really clear. And I also need to make sure that there's some prep around it because sometimes first time clients with me, they're very used to just a supine and prone approach.
Hmm.
I don't have that approach. Like there's actually 7 different client positions as far as I'm concerned, and then there's many novel somatic positionings from there. And so there is a lot of movement, and it's very different if people aren't used to that. And so, of course, there has to be a conversation and there has to be some preparation around that. So that it's not too shocking to their system so they can receive the work. And I do hold people, so it is incredibly intimate. And I call it therapeutic intimacy.
Yeah. I love that. That almost brought tears to my eyes hearing about, how that the patriarch of the family just
Yeah,
never got to be the little spoon. And this isn't unique to just the men that feel like they need to be in that masculine dominant role. There's so much of that I feel like in the women who are carrying it all, raising the
yeah,
kids, doing
yeah.
all the
Many
things, and
adults.
trying to embody the feminist capability independence and
I can do everything.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah.
and we can absolutely, but we just need a hug too. It's
Yeah.
okay to get that hug. So
Yeah.
I think that that's really really beautiful, and I can't wait to come learn from you. It seems so transformative, and there's such a prevalence, I think, of there's I wonder if it's a hesitancy to explore these techniques. I mean, you mentioned this started out with practicing these things with someone that you felt really comfortable with, and there is kind of a box that many practitioners are kind of working within. We don't necessarily explore too much outside of that box, and there's this capacity that we have for having that buddy that we can practice things with and feel really safe with and do these subtle things. What would you say to someone who's feeling really boxed in and really really nervous about stepping outside of that comfort zone of prone and supine?
What would I say? I would say that whether we want to acknowledge it or not, curiosity is the key to healing.
Mm,
It's when we become curious or enter a curious state that then we can let go of some of our preconditioned or pre-held views. And then it gets us out of that stuck place or out of the hamster wheel if we're in it. Because then we can see some of the patterns that are coming up for us. And we can see how things are both serving us and not serving us. So curiosity to me is 100% important and vital for any kind of shift that we want. Um, and I see this with massage therapists who have been in the game for quite a long time, like, 12 years, 15 years. And they kind of, they're good at what they do, but they know that there's more. Yet, like you've mentioned, there's also some nervousness about how do you expand beyond that. And one of the common themes that I see with students is they'll tell me, "Oh, I love this work, but my clients, there's no way I can do this to my clients."
yep.
And I'm like, who are you to decide on your client's behalf that this isn't for them? Make sure you're informed, make sure you're trained, make sure you've practiced. All those things are really important. Um, and then once you get a level of competency, then yeah, like don't just automatically decide on your client's behalf. Imagine if we did that like to athletes at sports events. Like, oh, you're a runner? Hey, you know what? I think today I'm going to work on your shoulders because that's what I think you need. Because I see your shoulders up here and you can't be running like this. No one wants to run like this. And then they're like, oh, but my legs, I've got this marathon coming up. Like, it's my legs. And instead you're going, oh, no, 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 it's your shoulders. Um, yeah, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Just that, what kind of reputation are you giving yourself as a therapist? Then the clients are going to be like, oh, well, I asked them to do this, but they insisted on doing this. And there's ways to approach that because, of course, we're going to have tools in our toolbox that we can see can be helpful. So, in that particular scenario, perhaps we're still going to work a little bit on shoulders to get, the shoulders down from the ears because that is correct. Running like this, it's not going to be great for their structure or at all. But we're also going to make sure that their muscles are, marathon ready and work on those.
Yeah, and communicate with them too about I go from such a place of communication to create that psychological safety prior to getting on the table. I have this whole process that I teach that I call setting the stage. From the moment someone looks at your website, there's a psychological process that's happening from the client's point of view that allows them to develop that rapport before you ever have a conversation. And being able to have the conversation about, yeah, okay, yeah, we'll definitely work on your legs and all of that. I do think that there's this shoulder tension that's possibly impacting your stride here. Do you mind if we explore a
Exactly.
little bit of that today, but then always circling back to, but I'm definitely going to prioritize addressing what you were here to resolve? Because there
Yeah.
is that disconnect sometimes from clients recognizing how their stride might be impacted by how much they're
Why their
holding
shoulders going like
themselves
this.
up here.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
bridging that gap and getting really good communication skills. And I imagine that's a big piece of what you teach because that's so important for these new positions and processes and developing safety that you're teaching people.
Yeah, and I loved what I heard you do just then was use invitational language. And invitational language is key, especially in our careers and in our field. Like if we, when you go to the doctor and they just kind of like dictate things at you and you're just kind of like, okay, buddy, I know you're in charge here and I know you've got all the information, but you could just say that with a little dose of kindness and I'd be able to hear it so much better. Um, yeah, so just thinking about how you yourself receive information, and
Yeah.
I know for myself, I receive it when it's done in an invitational way, just like you said, hey, like, yeah, I hear you asking me that, you really need your legs worked on. You've got this race coming up. You're getting race ready. Of course, we want your muscles to be warmed up. But also, what I'm noticing is that there's a little bit of like tension held up here on your shoulders. And perhaps that's just going to affect your gait a little bit. Is it okay for us to include some work on that?
Yeah. And they can say no. And that's
Yeah.
great because
No,
that's where
yeah.
they're at.
Yeah, yeah, because we're meeting them where they're at. And sure, it can be frustrating as the therapist
Mhm.
when you're like, "Mm, I got all these good things that I could have pulled out of my toolbox and used." Um, and sometimes we have to get out of our own way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And there might be so many other reasons that we're just not consciously, even the client might not be consciously aware of that. No, the shoulders are not a safe place to be working on today, and we have to work with that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Which,
Yeah.
going back to these five somatic nervous system presentations, another one that is in the hyper. So far we've done the armored body, which is hyper, and then we did the overstimulated, and then we have the inflamed body,
Mm.
and they're the ones that are just hypersensitive. Like, oh, everything hurts. Oh, I'm just so sensitive. Like, oh, it's really hard for me to receive body work. They're just in such a state of reactivity and so much inflammation in their body. They're often the ones that present with autoimmune disease.
Yep.
And their patterning is, it's still up there in sympathetic and it's got a lot of inflammation around it. And it's hard for them to receive because everything is so heightened. So touch is hard. And they're the ones that we have to have a little bit more of a slower approach. We have to have like, a lighter touch before we can get into the deeper tissues. Because otherwise their system is just going to be way too reactive.
Yeah, I imagine those that would be the cases as well. I'm one of those people. I've got the fibromyalgia as a way that my autoimmunity presents physically. And I imagine that those would be the ones where having a little bit more of an extended breath work attunement prior to beginning the hands-on work, even, obviously with permission, a little bit more work on the energetic body if that's within their skill set. I imagine that those would be the practices kind of to start working with those people.
Yeah, and also there's sometimes some of the clients who, if they're regular clients of mine, I give them a little bit of homework, such as, we're really going to make sure you're coming in super hydrated.
Mm,
Because if they're in a dehydrated stage and then they have all that inflammation,
yep.
ooh, it's a recipe for disaster. Like that's just, going to be a continual, like the tissues kicking you out.
Yeah, that's a big one. I mean, even just to look at the kind of electromagnetic level of the nervous system, how those nervous system impulses are communicating in the body. For me, the fibromyalgia feels like my electricity is on
Oh,
haywire,
yeah.
and that hydration really plays a huge role in the nerves actually being able to stop being so helter skelter and just communicate a little bit more. Oh, we're attuned.
Exactly. Way, way high on the important stage. And sometimes my clients will say to me, that's it. And I'll be like, yeah, that's it. Your job the day before coming in is making sure that you're really nice and hydrated. And then, Like make sure that you're continuing it on the day of your massage, of your appointment, and that's your homework.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're often in such a like inflamed place that they actually don't want to put things in their body
Mm-hmm.
because it doesn't feel good. Like, it's hard to like receive
Yeah.
because everything's so inflamed.
Everything's already too much, and it is
Exactly.
challenging to feel what feels like adding more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're all the hyper or the sympathetic responses. And one of the things that I see, which I am hopeful we're going to change with our attention and focus around nervous system patterning, is there's so much of this emphasis of rest and digest with the massage industry. And that's wonderful. And that's a parasympathetic response. And we want that. We want the rest and digest. But what happens when we get too far down into parasympathetic?
Mm,
Then we're going into disassociation and depressive patterning. That's
interesting.
where they live. They live at the bottom of parasympathetic responses. So, and there's two different ones of that. There's one that comes in as they're kind of like disembodied or disconnected. They say things like, I don't know what I feel. I just I just feel out of sorts.
Really out of touch, it sounds
Yeah,
like.
yeah, they're not embodied. They've become they're more in a dissociative pattern. So they can't tune into their body and really tell you. And there's sometimes the ones who are like, I don't know, like you're the expert. You do what you think.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes like one of the key phrases that I'm listening for with these nervous system presentations. I'm like, ooh, okay. Um, one, because it's too much effort for them. Like they don't want to have to tune into their body
Yeah.
because they're disassociated from it. And they just want their body to work. Like, can't it just work? Can't it just function? And they've got this level of like exasperation around it sometimes where they're like, "Oh, can't you just fix me?"
We've
And you're
all
like,
had that client.
well, yes and no, because like there's two of us here, buddy, and it's going to take two of us.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too because, whenever I think about dissociation, that's a response to something. There's something that they are trying to dissociate from.
Yeah, exactly. And that doesn't mean that that's something that we have to rush out and begin to bring into our scope of practice.
Yeah.
These are just patterns that can be recognized and can help you by recognize them in your clients, you can see where they're at. And you can be like, ah. And sometimes these are also the people who are so disassociated that, you could put an elephant on them and they'd be like, yeah, that feels fine.
Yep.
Like, I mean, all the pressure in the world is not going to affect this person because they're so far out of their body.
Yeah.
And that's a little
Interesting.
scary. It's a little scary for you as the practitioner when you recognize that because you're like, ooh, like, am I unintentionally causing harm because they can't tell me when they feel things?
Yeah, absolutely. That's where, the conversation about pressure, I've, I'm almost, I don't even remember how many teen years into my career I am now. I've lost count, but at this point in my career, I've kind of stopped asking, is that enough pressure or would you like more? I gauge kind of their response after seeing like, hey, how does this feel to you? And then if I can tell that they like it's not quite there based off of their response, I'll let them know that it might start feeling like more as their tissue warms up and absolutely speak up. But I like to work to a point where I feel the tissue respond. And that's how I know that I've hit a level that's therapeutic. But I often discourage opening up the invitation for them asking for more pressure because
Yeah.
I think you just gave language to what I've noticed in certain people that I could be pushing and pushing and pushing and they're never going to feel it. So
Mhm.
opening up the door, and those are generally the people that are like, yeah, you could go more, you could go more, you could go
Yeah,
more.
more. Yeah.
And that's just compromising us. So a different language around navigating their pressure preferences is a way to kind of protect our own body mechanics as well.
Yeah. And really, what is actually going on when you've got the client who is like, more, 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 more? It's like, what is going on here? Because that has something to do with neurons and neuroceptivity. So, what is actually happening?
Yeah.
they can't feel the pressure. Something is happening, and it's a nervous system response. They're disassociated from their own nervous system.
Yeah. And I'm imagining in your courses, there's ways to connect with that type of
Yes.
person.
Yeah, 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 big time. And I have a system where I call it the five touch languages. So we bring in air through breath, earth, grounding, fire, water, and wood, like part of how we then respond to these five nervous system presentations, which the very last one is the exhausted body. And they're the ones that come in and, you can kind of tell even when they first walk in the door, they're like this.
Mm,
They're often like, slumped over, they don't stand up straight. There's just kind of this like general kind of like lethargy in their body, and you can see it. Like their whole body, their whole posture is like, ugh. Um, and they're the ones that tell you like, I'm just tired all the time. It doesn't matter what I do. I'm always tired. Yeah. And they're often the ones that have been through some kind of burnout process.
mm. Yeah, I'm thinking adrenal fatigue, chronic
Exactly.
fatigue.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of them will know it. Some of them will have, gone on a journey to get information about what is happening for them, and, will have language around it and have a diagnosis to tell you. And some of them won't. So the ones that don't tell you that, they're the ones that, you're looking for these clues of them being like, oh, that all the time.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fascinating. And these, it really is like, you mentioned that you're good with patterns and that you love seeing these patterns in it. I joke with my clients that I'm a muscular detective because I've always been very good at finding those spots. And it really is kind of like detective work. It's, we're listening to the words, looking at the body language, and we're really taking all of this in, not necessarily so that we could be like, okay, I know I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. But from this perspective, it's like, how do I meet this client where they're at so that I can just show up and create a space where they can kind of go back to that. We're never back at like a stagnant nervous system, right? It's always in flux, but at least a more neutral and more balanced way of experiencing life.
Yeah, and the way I like to explain nervous system regulation to my clients is often these days, we experience very large spikes, sympathetic, parasympathetic, sympathetic, woo, woo, up and sympathetic. Now we
Yep.
work down. Versus what a healthy nervous system does for regulation is it oscillates. It has these waves that happen, and they go like very, like, just this nice wave up into sympathetic, which we need. We need sympathetic because we need a little bit of like um, that energy that comes with an anxiety patterning, but not too much. And same with like, the disassociate. Sometimes we need that.
Mm.
Sometimes we need to actually disengage, but not too much. So the problem is the spikes, and teaching the nervous system to actually have an oscillation between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. That's what healing is, because then we are resourced, and then we don't get stuck in the big spikes.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes so much sense. And that's such a really simple way of explaining it. They can get on board. I feel
Yeah,
like the general layman can understand, they can have that experience of their lives. They'll, oh yeah, I've been in that spike and I've been on edge for the rest of the day. I've gone home and
yeah,
screamed at my kids because of that board meeting that just really flew off the handle and it
yeah,
destroyed everything from there. But when we're regulated, we can have that stressful board meeting and our nervous system knows how to be like, okay, yeah, that was stressful. And I can come back to that gentle
yeah,
oscillative state. Oh, Tracy,
exactly.
I feel like I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours. And there's so many more tangents I want to go down. And I would love to maybe have like a part two for this and continue the conversation. But out of respect for your time, I would love to just kind of invite you to share, where can people go to learn more about what you teach and how to work with you, all of that good stuff.
Oh, thanks. So you can find me at the Art of Transformational Touch, my website. Um, I like to say that I'm a little bit of an organic girl, so I try to keep up on things, but life is my number one priority. So I try to keep it up to date, and my apologies if it's not, but it soon will be. You can also find me on social media. Once again, Instagram, Art of Transformational Touch. Also on Facebook as Tracy Windmill. And I offer teachings both in North America and in Europe. These days, I tend to do on my travels, I do 1 or 2 day trainings, and then a couple of times a year, I do retreats. So I actually just did a retreat in Indiana, and my next retreat actually isn't until the fall here in where I live in Colorado now, even though I can't take the Australian out of the girl, even though I've been here for over 2 decades. Yeah, so the one in the fall will be in November. It's going to be at a hot springs retreat. So lots of yummy, yummy nervous system regulation happening there. The hot springs resort is great because they have a cold plunge for some vagal nerve reset toning, as well as the hot springs. And then it is something that is continuing education. I am an approved provider, so there is hours with it for people. Yeah, and we take a dive into the somatic presentations of the nervous system. We take a dive into then how we as the practitioners can resource ourselves, and also how we can meet our clients where they're at with these presentations.
Amazing. Sign me up. I love that. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, we'll definitely link to all of that in the show notes. I just want to say thank you so much. This has been such an awesome conversation. I really appreciate getting to know you more and being able to continue the conversation. This is fantastic.
Yeah, thank you so much. I have a lot of gratitude, Gretchen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Sustainable Body Worker. If something resonated for you today, grab your free breakthrough session, which includes a custom hypnotherapy track to help you unlock the next level. Grab it now with the link in the show notes. And to hear more, hit subscribe. We'll see you next time.